Welcome to my channel StarWire Daily. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. Picture this: the most charismatic man in Hollywood, the pirate who sailed into our hearts, the Mad Hatter who danced through our dreams, completely silent. No witty remarks, no charming smiles, no signature gestures that made millions fall in love with Captain Jack Sparrow. Just silence. And in that silence, the world held its breath. This is the story of when Johnny Depp fell silent, and how that silence became the loudest sound in entertainment history. You see, there's something almost mythical about Johnny Depp's voice. Whether he was drawling as Jack Sparrow or whispering sweet nothings as Edward Scissorhands, that voice has been the soundtrack to some of cinema's most unforgettable moments. So when it disappeared from the public eye, when the red carpets went quiet, when the interviews stopped, Hollywood felt empty. But let me take you back to where this all began, because understanding Johnny's silence means understanding the man behind the madness. Born in Owensboro, Kentucky, John Christopher Depp, too, wasn't destined for stardom. He was running from it. A high school dropout at 15, bouncing between odd jobs, sleeping on friends' couches, dreaming not of Oscar nominations but of guitar riffs and rock and roll glory. The Depp we know today, the one who commands $20 million per film, once sold ballpoint pens over the phone to make rent. Isn't it fascinating how life works? The universe had other plans for this small-town rebel with a guitar and a dream. His first taste of Hollywood came through a chance encounter, and I mean chance. His first wife, Lori Ann Allison, happened to be friends with Nicolas Cage. One conversation, one introduction, hey, you should meet my agent, and suddenly Johnny Depp was auditioning for a little horror film called A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven saw something in those dark, mysterious eyes. Something dangerous. Something unforgettable. And just like that, Glenn Lance died a spectacular death, and Johnny Depp was born into immortality. But here's where the story gets interesting, because Johnny didn't want to be just another pretty face in Hollywood. Oh no. While other actors were chasing leading man roles, Johnny was gravitating toward the weird, the wonderful, the absolutely bizarre. Think about it. Edward Scissorhands. Who else could have brought such vulnerability to a character with literal knives for hands? Tim Burton saw what others couldn't. That behind those brooding features was an artist desperate to transform, to disappear into someone else entirely. And disappear he did. Film after film, Johnny became a shapeshifter. What's eating Gilbert Grape? Ed Wood. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Each role more daring than the last. Each character more removed from Johnny Depp the person. Critics called him fearless. Fans called him genius. Hollywood called him difficult. You see, Johnny Depp was never interested in playing a Hollywood game. While others networked at parties, he was studying Keith Richards' mannerisms for a pirate character that would change everything. While others played it safe, Johnny was taking risks that made studio executives nervous. And then came Jack Sparrow. Pirates of the Caribbean wasn't supposed to be Johnny's movie. It was Orlando Bloom's vehicle, Keira Knightley's breakthrough. But Johnny had other plans. He strutted onto that set with Keith Richards in his bones, Pepe Le Pew in his swagger, and created something that had never existed before in cinema. A pirate who was simultaneously dangerous and lovable, mysterious and hilarious. Disney executives were terrified. Test audiences were confused. But when that first film hit theaters, the world fell in love with Captain Jack Sparrow so hard that it hurt. Suddenly, Johnny Depp wasn't just an actor. He was a cultural phenomenon. The finger gestures, the eyeliner, the gold teeth, children everywhere were mimicking Jack Sparrow. Adults were too, if we're being honest. But success, real success, the kind that makes you one of the highest paid actors in the world, comes with a price. And Johnny Depp was about to learn just how expensive fame could be. Behind the scenes, while the world was celebrating Jack Sparrow, Johnny's personal life was becoming increasingly complicated. His relationship with Vanessa Paradis, the French goddess who gave him 2 beautiful children, was quietly fracturing. 14 years together, and it was ending not with fireworks, but with whispers. And then she walked into his life. Amber Heard. Beautiful, ambitious, 23 years old to his 48. She auditioned for The Rum Diary in 2009, and something electric happened on that set. Something that would ultimately change both of their lives forever. The timeline is crucial here because Johnny and Vanessa didn't officially separate until 2012. But rumors about Johnny and Amber started swirling much earlier. Hollywood loves a scandal, but this felt different. This felt destructive. Johnny threw himself into the relationship with the intensity he brought to his most challenging roles. Private jets to exotic locations, expensive gifts, passionate declarations of love. He was smitten completely and utterly captivated by this young actress who seemed to understand his artistic soul. They married in 2015 in a small ceremony on Johnny's private island in the Bahamas. The photos were gorgeous. Johnny in a simple white shirt, Amber in flowing white, both looking like they'd stepped out of a fairy tale. The world wished them well, hoping this brilliant actor had finally found his happily ever after. But fairy tales, as Johnny knew from playing so many troubled characters, rarely have happy endings. 15 months. That's how long the marriage lasted. 15 months, and it was over. But it wasn't a quiet divorce, so no. This was Hollywood, and Amber Heard had something to say. May 27th, 2006. But here's what the world didn't know at the time. While Johnny was suffering in silence, a different story was being carefully documented. Phone recordings, text messages, witness statements, photographs. His legal team wasn't just sitting idle, they were building a case. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. The settlement came in 2016. $7 million to Amber, donated to charity, she said. A joint statement about their relationship being intensely passionate and, at times, volatile. No admission of guilt from Johnny, no retraction from Amber. Just an uncomfortable peace that satisfied no one. Johnny thought it was over. He thought he could go back to being Jack Sparrow, back to disappearing into characters, back to making magic on screen. He was wrong. 2018, The Washington Post. An op-ed that changed everything, even though it never mentioned Johnny Depp by name. Amber wrote about being a domestic abuse survivor, about the backlash she faced, about speaking her truth in the face of powerful men. She didn't need to say his name. Everyone knew. And that's when Johnny's silence finally broke. The libel lawsuit in the UK came first. Johnny versus the Sun newspaper, who had called him a wife beater. 3 weeks of testimony that revealed intimate, embarrassing, devastating details about their relationship. Text messages where Johnny wrote horrible things about Amber. Audio recordings of fights. Photos, accusations, denials. Johnny testified for 5 days. 5 days of having his entire life dissected in public. 5 days of admitting to drug use, alcohol abuse, violent fantasies. 5 days of trying to prove he wasn't the monster everyone thought he was. He lost. The judge ruled that 12 of the 14 abuse allegations were substantially true. Johnny Depp, the man who had brought joy to millions, was officially labeled a wife beater by a British court. And then came the Virginia lawsuit. The big one. Johnny versus Amber, broadcast live for the world to see. 6 weeks of testimony that turned into the most watched legal proceeding in entertainment history. But something had changed in those years of silence. Something fundamental in how the world saw Johnny Depp. Because during those long years when Johnny wasn't speaking, his fans were listening to other voices. His ex-partner spoke out, Winona Ryder, Vanessa Paradis, Kate Moss. None of them described an abuser. His employees, his friends, his colleagues painted a picture of a man who was troubled, yes, but not violent toward women. The world began to question the narrative they'd been fed. And when Johnny finally spoke in that Virginia courtroom, when he looked directly into the camera and said, "No human being is perfect, but I have never in my life committed domestic violence against any woman," something shifted in the collective consciousness. The verdict was clear. Amber was found guilty of defamation on 3 counts. Johnny was awarded over $10 million in damages. But more importantly, his reputation began its journey back from the dead. The videos of Johnny signing autographs outside the courthouse, the fan chants, the social media support, It was clear that the world was ready to forgive Johnny Depp, ready to welcome back their pirate, their Mad Hatter, their Edward Scissorhands. But here's what's truly fascinating about Johnny's silence and his eventual return of voice. It wasn't just about legal vindication. It was about transformation. The Johnny who emerged from those years of silence was different from the one who went in. Gone was some of the arrogance, the assumption that talent alone would protect him. In its place was humility, gratitude, and a deeper understanding of how precious and fragile public love can be. His first public appearance after the trial verdict was at a Jeff Beck concert, guitar in hand, back to his musical roots. The crowd's reaction was electric, pure joy, pure relief, pure love. Johnny was crying, the audience was crying, and for a moment, all was right with the world again. And then came the film festivals. King gave him a standing ovation that lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes of applause for a man who had been written off by Hollywood. The Karlovy Vary International Film Festival honored him with a Lifetime Achievement Award. The industry was slowly, carefully welcoming him home. The Pirates franchise started making noise about bringing him back. Disney, who had so quickly distanced themselves, began testing the waters for Jack Sparrow's return. Fan campaigns with millions of supporters proved that the audience never really left Johnny's side. But perhaps the most beautiful part of Johnny's journey from silence back to voice is what it taught us about redemption, about the complexity of truth, and about the power of patience. Johnny's silence wasn't just about legal strategy or public relations damage control. It was about a man learning to live with consequences, fair or unfair. It was about discovering who he was when stripped of everything that defined him, the roles, the fame, the adoration. And what emerged from that silence was someone more authentic, more vulnerable, more human than the Johnny Depp who had walked red carpets with seemingly unshakable confidence. Today, Johnny Depp is not the same man who fell silent all those years ago. He's weathered, wiser, grateful for every opportunity to create again. His recent films have been met with enthusiasm from audiences hungry for his unique brand of magic. His music, his art, his collaborations. Everything feels more intentional, more precious. The world that listened during his silence continues to listen now that he's found his voice again. But both Johnny and his audience have learned something valuable in the process. Fame is temporary. Talent is lasting. Truth, no matter how long it takes to